Welcome to the Analytics Engineering Podcast, featuring conversations with practitioners inventing the future of analytics engineering. In this episode, I talked to Rahul Jain. Rahul is a data engineering manager at Snowflake. He's part of Snowflake's internal data org, serving internal customers. Rahul lives in and is from India, and we start our conversation talking about the Indian tech scene. We then take up all kinds of data topics from Iceberg to streaming to AI. I always find it super fascinating to talk to the folks on the ground doing data work inside of the companies that make the most advanced technologies in the space. And I truly enjoyed getting the opportunity to chat with Rahul. Without further ado, let's get into it. Rahul, welcome to the Analytics Engineering Podcast.
Thanks, Tristan, for inviting me.
I was doing some research for this episode. I was looking through your LinkedIn bio, and from what I could tell, you have an interesting story. It looks like you started your career in Mumbai. You moved to San Francisco for a hot second, and then you went back to India, but I think you're located in Pune. Is that right? Where are you, like, right this second as we're talking?
I'm located in Pune, in India.
Got it. And can you tell us about that journey? Like, what most folks don't do the double jump, the like relocate and then relocate back. What inspired you there?
Yeah, I started my career in Mumbai, right, in India, and then I've always wanted to, come to US and especially to Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, to experience, what's happening in the tech side of the world, right? And was very fascinated about the concept of Silicon Valley, and we used to watch some web series around it, documentaries. So luckily, while working in Mumbai, I got chance to move to Boston first. So on H1B. So I came to Boston, spent 1 year there, loved it.
Boston's incredible. I spent 3 years there. I love it.
Oh, the beauty, and especially I came near about fall season. Roam around, and it was amazing experience. But I was tempted to move to again Silicon Valley of the world, right, the Bay Area. So I could find opportunity in San Francisco, downtown, and switch my job and move there. Stayed there for around 2 years, and yeah, and then due to family commitments, my parents were aging and other stuff, so I had to come back to India for good, I would say.
Without getting into my much too boring backstory in this topic, I've been very close with many folks in the Indian community throughout my life. I was kind of a member of an Indian Pakistani family for almost a decade, and I have a lot of affinity for that part of the world. I feel like it is so common for Indians, especially in tech, to move to the US. And there's always this thought of like, one day I'll go back because whatever it is, aging parents or like, I want to raise my kids there or whatever. But the folks that I have known have always, like, time has ticked by and they've just like never actually done it. They've always felt a little bit guilty about it, but you actually did it. And my sense is from reading your LinkedIn post that you're like quite bullish on India and the economy and the tech sector and all that. Can you tell me a little bit about like why you're bullish on India?
Absolutely. So you're right. Some of my friends I made there, they again, when we talk, right, always they want to come back, but something or the other is stopping them to stay there, right? And of course, some of them, got into kids. Their kids are in schools and etc. But yeah, coming to this interesting part about the, how I'm bullish on India and why, right? Um, there are two, three macro reasons for it, right? So one is the demographic dividend, which we call. So basically, at present, around 65% of the population in India is below 35 years of the age. I may be, the data may be here and there, but approximately like that.
That used to be kind of common for all countries, but that is very unusual in the world today, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly. So at one time, I think in America, right, there was a case in 1960s or 70s, right? Same in Europe, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, the political stability we have in India since last 12 years or so, right? And the aspiration I see um, in in individuals, right? When I and not only in tech industry, right? Some unorganized sectors, real estate, tech, finance, even the mom and pop stores and service providers. Everybody is so aspiring to come out of lower class or middle class, and in terms of per capita income. So that all excites me a lot here. And I learned a lot in US in 3 years. I think some of the uh, lifelong perception I had before moving to US, those got changed. I still learn a lot from some of my friends and colleagues and people I work with. So yeah, I think that's the best combination one could get. Born, let's say I'm born in my home country, moved to US. I hope, I mean, I wish I could spend more time in US and other part of the world. I never know, when I could come back. But definitely, coming back to India, I can incorporate those learnings and mindset when I'm working in India. And you will see, you know, and you can see people who are, let's say, traveled or outside India and came back. You can see the difference, the way they work, the way they approach the work, right?
What does the experience of being in the US help you bring back to your day to day?
I think there are many small things, but I'll say, one or two major changes I see, right? So culturally, so as a culture in India, the way I born in very small town in one of the not so developed part of the India, and I come from very humble background, and people are not very direct in India, right? They are always diplomatic, and they are never saying no to things, right? And they're always thinking about other people. So something in mind, but something they will say, right? Most of the time, the first thing I learned in US when I landed, right? People are very punctual about time. They value their time,
I
and
remember in it used to be a term that was used around me a lot. DST, Daisy Standard Time.
yeah, exactly. So we call it. So let's say somebody invites you in India at 6 o'clock for some gathering, and you're ready at 6, but you will not go at 6. You'll go at 7 because other people are not coming at that time. But that is changing with the new generation coming
Mm.
up in India. They have a global exposure. But yeah, I learned this thing to be how to be direct, to be very assertive. You know, when you say yes, you mean yes. You say no, you mean that. So that thing is helping me a lot, saving productivity, increasing productivity, saving some time. And then the communication skills, I would say, and the personal branding. This is something which are very underrated in
Which you've
India.
been very successful at. How long have you been at that on LinkedIn?
Oh, I think I started, about personal branding about somewhere in 2021, around 3 years ago, when I started writing some posts and some articles and building community. So 3 to 4 years.
You're at what, 28,000 followers at this point?
I think reaching 28
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah. It's impressive. I You are currently, tell me if this is wrong. I think you're currently a data engineering manager at Snowflake. Is that right?
That's right.
There's this funny thing where when you are the user of a software product, but you work for the company that makes that software product, then you have this dual role. You have to like be a data engineering manager, but then you also have to explain and advocate for the platform that you're using, because there are not that many people inside of Snowflake that like truly understand the platform, the product better than you do, because you and your teams are the user. How do you balance these responsibilities? Like, are you mostly spending your time delivering data outcomes to the business, or are you mostly spending your time on stages in front of audiences?
So very interesting question, Tristan. Actually, that's one of the reason I joined Snowflake. So before joining Snowflake, I was a Snowflake customer. So I was sitting in another company implementing. My team was implementing data platform on Snowflake. And you can, it may sound a little cliche, but you can tell this. When I got introduced first time to Snowflake platform, it was kind of love at first sight to that platform. The ease of use and so many things, right? So when I joined Snowflake, right, my core responsibility is building data products and data-driven solutions, which helps Snowflake internal businesses, different verticals, right? But additionally, one of the role I play here is again talking and about the use cases in the platform. So I work closely with marketing team, sales engineering team, sales team, doing a lot of keynotes, breakout session in the global events, and the with the developer community I'm closely connected with.
And that's like not stuff you do on nights and weekends. Like that's explicitly a part of your role at this point.
That's not part of my role. That's not. I mean, it's it now. My role is evolving into that. So if you say on the books, the title I own, it's not part of my role, but I love doing it. And the leadership here is very very appreciative. They're giving those opportunities. So and Tristan, one thing I truly feel, if you are a proud user of something, whether it's a tech product or any day to day utility product, then you automatically try to market it. By default, you try to market it, and it comes from heart within, right? You need not to go through all those marketing presentations in the PPT. So what I do here at Snowflake, I those use cases which I build, I just go and talk about it to the world, to the data community.
That's great. Let's do it. Like, tell me, how does Snowflake do data engineering?
So, first of all, before I jump into it, so I just want to mention that I'm here at my personal capacity, right? So, uh, this is not sponsored by Snowflake or something. So, so at Snowflake, since it's a data platform, right? It's a cloud data platform. We take data very, very seriously, and this is my sixth organization where I'm working in last 14 years. But it is a truly data driven organization, I can say, because we practice data, we live and breathe data. Not only the data engineering team, all the functions, be it sales engineering, marketing, finance, workplace, each and every function try to have this data driven mindset. Now how it comes down to my work, right? So my team is a horizontal team within Snowflake, right? And my team supports four different verticals. Let's say sales, we call it GTM, go to market, finance, workplace, legal, security, and other verticals, right?
I mean, how many other verticals are there? Those are some huge verticals.
So three major vertical: GTM, finance, and then and third vertical is combination of these small things like legal, IT, and workplace. So I combine this in a third pod, I would say.
But like, how many other teams like yours are there in the company? Because you cover a lot.
Like a typical SaaS company, right? We have a say GTM, we have a finance, we have legal, marketing, and then compliances, corporate security, product security, engineering, product uh, management. These all verticals, and the technical support, of course. These are the major, and then HR verticals. These all we have. So my team, is a horizontal team, cuts through all these major verticals, and then we create. So we have a centralized repository of data where we all the data which belongs to Snowflake comes to a single tenant, single platform, and then based on the domain. When I say domain, you can call it the verticals, business areas, basically business units. Um, we cater to them. So most of the time we create data models. So especially analytics engineering side, my team spend 80% of the time in analytics engineering. So creating data models, common data models, some aggregations, and then again powered by data quality, observability, data governance, and then expose this to these business units so that they can create their own analytics sometimes if they have their own analytics team, or sometimes we are engaged in enriching their source system data. So we reverse it here or push back this golden data, or the enriched data, to their source systems, let's say Workday, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Jira, these source systems.
I know that Snowflake has been using DBT for a long time. I'd be interested to hear if you feel like your use of DBT is different or novel, based on your unique role in the ecosystem, and it would be also I'd be curious to hear if there's ever other tooling that you use in your stack that's worth talking about.
Yeah, so stack is very big, but we use DBT since the beginning for especially for data modeling, right, and analytics engineering purposes. And I would say we are very very satisfied, users of DBT, and especially my team. Uh, they spend almost 70 to 80% of the time writing models in DBT and deploying them. So yeah, so we are very satisfied user of DBT, I would say.
That's great to hear. What do you think about the talent market for DBT in India? It's still a new-ish product. There's probably deep benches of talent in India, writing Spark, Informatica, all these different ways to get similar jobs done. Do you have a hard time sourcing DBT talent in India, or do you think there's a lot of it there?
I would say it's not lot yet, because as you said, India is majorly heavily relying the developer community in India heavily relying on Spark, Informatica, and ETL of the world, right? Another talent in these source system, these ETL tools. DBT is picking up, especially with niche companies or new age tech companies. But I would say I still find some difficulty sourcing talent.
Do you assume you're going to have to train people when you bring them into your team?
Oh yeah, I have to do it, but I would say it's the learning curve is very easy, or the small, because it's a lot of documentation available. And I remember when, and I'll tell you one thing: when somebody we wrote the offer and somebody new joins the team, I give them, there is a 4 hour DBT free badge, right, workshop. So I ask them that the first day you need to go through it, and then if they're not already familiar, so it's easy to pick up. But still, there is a lot we can do with DBT currently, which people may not be exploring right now here.
One of the interesting things about the Indian market is that oftentimes, and this is probably not universally true, but oftentimes there's budget sensitivity, and so open source tools like Spark, like DBT, have I think an easier time spreading. But what's interesting is that you mentioned Informatica before. I think it's fair to say Informatica is pretty freaking expensive. And yet there's a huge base of Informatica expertise in the country. Who is using Informatica, and why? How do you square these two things?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a very interesting fact, Tristan. When you talk about the cost sensitive, India's cost sensitive, price sensitive market, right? That's right. But you need to understand one thing: the undercurrent. The developer community in India, they most of the time they are working for some of the global companies, which maybe the head office may be located in US or the Europe or UK of the world, right, or Australia. This is the global captive centers or the offshore centers, you can call it, in India. They're working. So India, so in most of the cases, India is not the revenue generating entity. Thus, these decisions of whether to have Informatica or DBT or Snowflake of the world, these still are done in the headquarters, or maybe where the company exists, right, initially. That's why having though I agree Informatica is expensive, but this is getting paid from the headquarters. um Now, coming to who is using Informatica in India, right? Most of the time, these banking and financial institution, right? The Capital One, City Bank of the world, or those legacy traditional data warehousing systems they have still. They are the uh, I see around, let's say, two 200 to 300 people team who are just working on Informatica products in India, based out of India. And I think they are the first. I think they came to uh, this ecosystem pretty early. In when I started my career, that time Informatica used to be very hot technology here in India itself. So yeah, so price sensitive, I don't see price sensitive thing is the major factor why you know India developers in India are more towards Spark. This is a factor for India based startups,
Hmm.
but not for the
Yep, got it.
global companies, right?
That makes total sense. Let's switch gears. I think that you are on record as talking about Iceberg in public settings, right? Like, hey, did you give a talk on Iceberg at some point?
Oh yeah, I did some breakout sessions in Snowflake events about Iceberg and interoperability as well.
Okay, awesome. Maybe just to give a quick background, Iceberg is an open table format. It has kind of taken off in popularity over the past, I don't know, year, maybe 2 years. There were some big announcements in June that back to back weeks, both Snowflake and Databricks made pretty serious commitments to the Iceberg ecosystem, which is fantastic. I'm curious in your perception of the customer pain that this solves. Like you could come at it from different directions, but like what do you think is driving customer interest in Iceberg?
So two things, right? One is the interoperability, which results into the no vendor locking kind of mindset, right? So it's, see, the data platforms or data hubs are becoming the center part of the digitalization strategy of for companies, right? For tech companies. Now, customers always have this dilemma in mind. Let's say they choose one platform, Snowflake, Databricks, or let's say Redshift, BigQuery, anything. Now, if something knows, and this is fast evolving ecosystem right now with Gen AI offerings and LLM offerings. Now, if customers want to be agile, then they are looking for some middle ground where they can, using which they can not quickly, but think about switching the platform or the processing engine they are using currently. So open table format like Iceberg provide that kind of flexibility where you store data in the open table format and you use query or processing engine like Snowflake or Databricks or any other. And then, the cost wise also it makes sense because your data is always there in the Parquet format most of the time, and you're using blob storage to store that, right? So you save on the storage cost. Though it needs so I'm not talking about the total cost of ownership, right? It may be a little more because you need the expertise and hands to implement it and then keep maintaining it. But if you don't have any, yeah, just to finish my thought. So then let's say people are moving towards lake house kind of concepts where they want to get benefit of data warehouse and data lake. Then having the one core data platform like Snowflake or Databricks, and then having the some data in lake using the open table format. Marrying these two together make a lot of sense sometimes for bigger enterprises. That I should say.
I think I would generally agree that the pull we're seeing in the market is primarily from larger enterprises, and it is from the main benefit that we hear is strategic flexibility and the ability to kind of not be locked into a single platform. Because yes, like you said, things are moving quickly. I think a lot of times there's a misconception that if you store data in the Iceberg table format, that you've done it. That's what everyone's talking about. But in fact, I think that storing data in the Iceberg format is only a part of the game. The next phase is like, well, where's your catalog? And this is where things get complicated. Snowflake made an announcement about Polaris at Snowflake Summit, but there's also internally managed like Snowflake managed catalog. Then there's externally managed catalogs, and I'm just curious if you could help us figure out the differences between these things and the advantages and the limitations, etc.
Yeah, definitely. To just to simplify, right? What you said it right. Storing data in Iceberg format is one thing, but unless you have a catalog, you will not be able to query, let's say, the latest data, or keep track of the latest and all the atomic properties if you want to leverage, right? Now, what happened is, as and when this Iceberg table format started getting traction, each platform or like Snowflake, Databricks, they all started creating their own catalog. So that's called a Snowflake managed catalog. Let's say in this case, I can talk about where your and you need to understand what catalog is not. So catalog is not storing the actual data; it is just a pointer to the data which is stored somewhere in the cloud in Iceberg format. So catalog is just keeping the pointer to the latest data or latest files.
And it's responsible for like essentially when you serve a query, it needs to in a very low latency way tell you what is the most up to date pointer to that the correct file I should be looking at.
Absolutely, that's right. So you can think of it's a metadata, right? It keep the track of metadata. Now, where do you keep this metadata? Because it needs its own life cycle, right? And the management. So one way of doing is you keep this metadata with Snowflake in this case, let's say, and that is called Snowflake managed catalog. You need not to worry about how the UI, or how you will or the console, how you will view and your team will view the catalog, explore the different metadata tables, etc. So Snowflake provide you Snowflake managed catalog.
And if you're using Snowflake Managed Catalog, could you like point Athena to Snowflake Managed Catalog also, or is it just to be used by Snowflake?
It is just to be used within Snowflake.
Okay, okay,
So from the Snowflake processing engine, you
okay.
can only query the Snowflake managed catalog. Now, there is so that's why Snowflake came up with the another concept of open sourcing the catalog, or the externally managed catalog, I would say, and it is currently in the incubation stage, right? So it's called Polaris. So where, if you don't want to have your catalog managed by Snowflake, you can manage your own catalog, and the framework is name is Polaris. So Snowflake give you it's an open source incubation project which Apache Foundation. You can bring that code base and create your and manage your own catalog in your own infrastructure using the Polaris capability SDKs, right? But in this case, you need to take care of the wrapper, the front end you want to, or UI you want to put in front of Polaris, right? The cataloging engine will be given by the Snowflake in open source format. There is another version of external catalog managed by Snowflake. It's little different than the Snowflake managed catalog. So Snowflake giving you Polaris as a service. So that service is hosted by Snowflake. They will charge some money for it, but you need not to worry. You just create connection strings, secure connection strings to your Iceberg tables, and you're good to go. You need not to worry about using those SDKs and putting the wrapper or UI or the console around it.
So this is where Snowflake could host a catalog that I could then turn around and have other services also use that as the catalog backing up their. Okay,
Absolutely,
great.
absolutely.
And Polaris is, you mentioned Apache Foundation. I think Polaris itself is open sourced. Is that's the idea?
Yes, this is going to be open source. Right now, it is in incubation stage.
Okay.
So that on the paper, it's not open source right yet, but soon it is going
Okay.
to be.
And there's no public announcement of what soon looks like, right?
No, I think I checked last month. Till then, it's not.
Okay. I really did appreciate the clarity that came from both Ali at Databricks and Sridhar at Snowflake standing up on stage, and both of them saying, like, open table formats are a big freaking deal, and we care about Iceberg. Because, certainly you could imagine a world where that was total vaporware and everybody stepped away from that. But like, I think it's really meaningful that both CEOs got up on stage and said that, and I think it's a pretty reliable indication of where the industry is going. Is the catalog just responsible for providing pointers to files like we were talking about? Or there are other things that, like, I think that many catalogs manage like file compaction. Are there like other things that the catalog is responsible for as well, like optimization type things?
I am not too much deep into those automation part,
Okay.
but I just used it and demoed it, and based on it, I need to go back and check
Yeah.
about the optimization part. But right now, what I feel it's about keeping track of the latest file as a pointers.
Do you have any expectation on, like, is there a performance difference when people use the Snowflake native storage versus Snowflake managed Polaris versus et cetera? Like, how should people think about the performance implications here?
It's very obvious, right? If the data is stored inside Snowflake or that platform and you're querying it, the performance will be much faster. And versus querying is using the catalog and then the Apache format. So the native data storage performance will be faster for obvious reasons, right? Because same, the infra same with very less latency and the compatibility. But yeah, so they will be always faster than the externally managed catalog, and then storing in the Iceberg format. Though I have not done any benchmark right now study, but from the first principle, I can say these things.
Okay, yeah, that's how I've heard Snowflake frame this as well. There's a trade-off. There's a performance to kind of openness trade-off. And maybe over time that trade-off will decrease, and maybe yeah. I don't. It's hard to know where things will go from here. But I'd like to imagine that we don't have to make hard decisions like that. It makes you wonder, like, are people just going to save their data twice? One for the performance optimized way and one for the a more open way. I don't know. Okay, let's you teased large language models before. I think of Snowflake's history with AI and LLMs as having kind of two distinct phases. There's the like pre-Sridhar phase and the post-Sridhar phase. And I think of the pre-Sridhar phase as kind of like Snowpark container services and Docker, and then the post-Sridhar phase is more like Cortex. Do you think that's like an appropriate way of thinking about this? And can you explain what I'm talking about to our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. So there is a recent change 6 months back when the new CEO joined Snowflake, Sridhar. And Sridhar comes with a lot of experience in artificial intelligence in AI side of the world, especially in semantic search. He did a lot of work, and he's a technologist, I would say, by his work what he did in past with Google, with his own startup. And that's right. The moment Sridhar joined Snowflake, I think, and some of his colleagues, um, all of a sudden this entire Cortex thing came into picture, and everybody's inside Snowflake because we got a first preview of these things right before it went to market. And the and again it ties back to though the Cortex and the semantic search was the Sridhar's idea or brainchild when he came to Snowflake, but the core philosophy of Snowflake, which is simplicity, the way the platform was built. So Cortex functions, whether it's machine learning powered functions or LLM functions, these things are so simple to use, and there is so much excitement within the Snowflake itself about these functions where you need, and we market it like use AI in seconds, right? So so that was the shift which happened post Sridhar, where everybody is empowered to use these large language models, not directly but in form of SQL functions. And there is a lot of talk and about how to expand that and create more about it.
It seems to me to be such an obvious integration point. Like the primary persona, at least I think of Snowflake is not somebody who spends a lot of time managing Docker images and thinking about those types of technical tasks, like your DBAs and analytics engineers and data analysts, and just the ability to have an API and wrap it up in a SQL function seems like obviously correct to me. Have you seen, since Cortex, have you seen adoption of AI in the Snowflake platform accelerate?
Oh, 100%. So, and I'll tell you, sometimes I think we are overdoing it internally because everybody, not only the data team, everybody like the project management, all the other cross non technical team also, they, can write these SQL and started using. Um, we still have to figure out internally a lot of use cases which will impact at scale, but it's still these Cortex functions I think we are using heavily internally.
Got it. Um, I was going through your back catalog, and it was like 4 or 5 years ago. You wrote a post about ETL to ELT, and I think that was a fun thing to write about 4 or 5 years ago. And today it's kind of old news. Like, we all kind of accept that this is the general ELT is kind of the general paradigm. It was funny though. There was somebody in the comments section that said, "What about streaming?" And back in 2019 or 20, there was really no answer for how do you build ELT pipelines that have kind of streaming characteristics. And for you can debate about what exactly streaming means. Do you see people today building ELT pipelines that look more like streaming? And I know that Snowflake has functionality here with dynamic tables and other stuff. I'm just curious how you see this conversation evolving.
Yeah, so you made very valid point, right? We can debate what is streaming, and I will give the another perspective. When people say real time, how much real it is, right? Sometimes very near real time is also real time. Some people, there is no definite quantization of this, right? Quantification of this. So I would say, when I approach streaming, or I think about it, it's in most of the use cases when it comes to ELT or the data warehousing kind of the world, where we are not serving the end user, or D2C kind of applications, then having some latency or near to real time is enough to do when it comes to analytics. If you want a real time analytics, if there is a 1 minute or 5 minute lag, it is still okay, right? So, and to achieve those things, I think these platforms are doing pretty good job in terms of, let's say, dynamic tables and Snowpipe kind of the world.
Do you have any DBT pipelines that are just like end to end Snowflake dynamic tables? I have not personally like gone all in on dynamic tables, but I'm curious if you've pushed it hard.
Yeah, so we are right now in that phase where we are moving some of the pipelines which were managed through Airflow tags to complete dynamic tables using DBT. And I would say we are not completely there with end-to-end pipeline using DBT, using dynamic tables inside DBT. But one of the initiative we are doing currently, where we are migrating from those Airflow decks to dynamic tables and on DBT itself. Those are more from the master data management side.
So many of our like the things that we think about in the industry are there's an underlying consensus that we're fundamentally talking about batch. I didn't mention airflow, but you added airflow to the conversation, which makes complete sense because if you put everything in dynamic tables, then all of a sudden there's no like quote unquote orchestration. You just like declare the dynamic tables and they keep doing their thing. But then it also changes things like observability. Like you just like wouldn't observe a streaming world in the same way that you observe kind of a batch or airflow world. Have you spent much time thinking about like if you move all these things over to dynamic tables, like how do you provide observability on top of that? What happens if it fails?
Yeah, so you're right. That's why I personally get very practical, and I tell the same thing to my team, that if somebody coming to you, or you feel, because this is a new um, see, real time or streaming, these sounds very cool stuff, right? But do you really need it? Right? What the end use of it? Who is consuming that data? So that impedance matching should be there. Who is consuming? Do they really need the real time stuff, right? That's why I personally, and there is a consensus to, if possible, if there is no business impact, keep things in batch mode, because you can observe them very well, you know and these are more stable. But we have not built, I would be very transparent, we have not built anything uh, concrete to observe the dynamic table data processing using dynamic tables.
And I don't think you're alone there. I think that we as an industry are still early. It's funny if you had asked me 4 years ago, like why don't people build more streaming pipelines in ELT? I would have said like, well, we don't really have the technology to do it. But today, I don't think that's true. I think we do have the technology to do it. But I don't actually have a great answer to why we're not seeing more of it happen. Maybe it's happening, but it's not in kind of the BI or analytics use case, and so we don't get to see it as much.
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned. So if you categorize the use case, so BI and analytics use case, we are not seeing this too much. It's more of the customer facing apps. Let's say I'm booking my ride, or buying something from e-commerce website. There it is more evident, but not in the BI and analytics use case.
Got it. What else are you thinking about these days that I haven't asked you about? What's your next LinkedIn post going to be about?
Interesting. So other than this, I'm spending a lot of time in personal finance stuff. That's one.
Hmm?
Other than my job, this is my the area I like exploring, and understand the economy, how the capital cycle works. I mean, little off the topic, but technology wise,
Do you think about that as a like almost public service that you do? Like it seems like you care a lot about financial literacy.
see, it's not completely public service. I would not be completely right, but I think That's a byproduct of it. So how I approach is, if I know something, that's the inherent, the character inside me, that if I learn something new, I try to simplify it. So days are gone when people used to complicate things, right? And if you are speaking something complicated, and then people will value or respect you. But one of the core thing I like is simplifying things. And the more I teach, and I have not mentioned this, before joining Snowflake, I used to uh, teach Snowflake as well along with my job. So I used to do corporate trainings. And one of the things you learn by teaching, or writing blog post or documenting it, once you get it completely, then only you can write about it, in simplified manner. So that's my internal exercise. And one of the byproduct is, obviously, the financial literacy around the world.
That's very cool. Well, let me ask you the question that we use to close out the podcast. What is something that you hope, and this is like bringing out your optimism, what is something you hope is true of the data industry over the next 5 years?
Data literacy is something which is increasing, and especially with a lot of focus. uh, so basically, democratization of uh, LLMs happened, right? That somehow bring back the focus on the data. As they say, right, if you do not have a data strategy, you will not have the AI strategy, right? So in order to take or the reap the benefit of AI, people are going to put data in, taking data seriously. That's what I feel. And a lot of tools and as you said, right, technologies are also evolving very fast. So easy to use, right? Not everybody would like to write Spark job for data processing, right? And people like you, right, your team is making uh, writing SQL and deploying SQL very, very easy.
So people have talked about data democratization for as long as I've been doing this, for a couple decades. And do you think that LLMs is a big unlock in terms of actually making this thing that we've all been talking about for a long time become real?
At two level, yes. So one is getting traction about the data. So people, you and I were, we spend quite a lot of time in the data industry, so we know these trends are coming. But the general public who is not in the tech industry or the business side, they started taking this seriously. So so creating that mindset or environment is one thing, and second thing is, of course, uh, using the natural language when you interact with, let you if you can interact with the data using co-pilots, etc. That makes a lot of focus on the data driven uh, products or data industry. So that's why I'm very, very hopeful on, for next 5 years, as you mentioned, uh, where we and the storage is also getting cheaper, right? With evolution of cloud and these things, of course the compute is not that cheap. And there are other challenges with, let's say, Elon Musk talking about that the electricity will run out of transformers, all those macro factors, right? But I know, I mean, we have, as a humanity, and we have crossed those bridges many times, right? But it's coming back to data industry, yes, a lot of good thing happening, and traction is there now. What we teach, when I go and talk up to some of my friends, or let's say my parents, about what my role is, they feel proud about, okay, you are in data industry, you're doing stuff. Earlier in India especially, that was not the case.
That's really neat to hear. I think that's a great place to leave it. Rahul, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thanks, Tristan, loved it.
The Analytics Engineering Podcast is sponsored by DBT Labs. I'm your host, Tristan Handy. Email us at podcast@dbtlabs.com with comments and guest suggestions. Our producers are Jeff Fox and Dan Poppy. If you enjoyed the show, drop us a review or share with a friend. Thanks for listening.